Welcome to Michi Designs. So in today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to make this beautiful bomber jacket. I'm so excited to teach you how I made this jacket. Like, it's so beautiful. I know you've watched a lot of videos on how to make this jacket, but trust me, this is a very detailed video and it's very simple and well understood, and it's a bit long because every detail is in this video. So let's get started. So now these are the materials we're going to be using for this tutorial. You can see the ribbon fabric there. You can call it elastic band. Then you see the two different Ankara fabrics we're going to be using for the two-in-one jacket. And then let's get started with the pattern drafting. We're going to be drafting both the front and back in one piece, one single piece. So I'm going to be marking a zipper allowance. There will be a zipper at the front of the jacket. So I'm marking 1.5 inches zipper allowance. The length of this jacket is 22 inches. It won't get to the hip length, so it's going to stop at 22 inches, and then it's going to have a band, 2 inches band. So I'm minusing that 2 inches band from this total length, so I'm going to be having 20 inches. So now I'm marking the zipper allowance right there. After marking the allowance, I will now start taking my measurements after the zipper allowance. I'm using a neck width of 3 inches, 3 by 3 for the front, and then 3 by 1.5 for the back. 3 inches for both front and back for the width, and then the neck depth for the front is 3 inches, while that of the back is 1.5 inches. So I'm extending this front neckline to the zipper allowance because the zip is going to be at the front. And then I'm using a shoulder measurement of 8 inches. But for the sake of this jacket, it's a bomber jacket, it needs to be free at the arms area. So I'm adding half an inch ease. So I marked 8.5 inches there. And then I marked my 1 inch shoulder slope, which I'm connecting to the neckline now. Then after that, I'm marking the armhole. I'm using an armhole measurement of 8 inches, but it's going to have an half inch ease as well. So I'm marking I marked 8.5 inches there. Then I'm connecting it, and that forms my chest line. So now on this chest line now, I'm making sure that the shoulder measurement of 8.5 inches is also there to give me a straight line straight to the shoulder slope. And then after that, I'm going to mark the length of this jacket. Like I said earlier, it's going to be 20 inches because I'm going to use the extra 2 inches for the elastic band. So I'm going to add half an inch there to join it to the elastic band. So I marked a total of 20.5 inches. Please note that this jacket does not have a waist measurement because it's a free dress. We're going to ignore the waist. So I just marked the chest line and then the desired length, which is the 20 inches plus half an inch for joining to the band. So I'm marking my bust measurement on this chest line now, 9.25 inches. Then I'm marking 3 inches as is, extra 3 inches as is, and then half an inch for the side seam allowance, the sewing allowance. Then I want to mark my armhole curve here. Then by getting the midpoint of the armhole and then going in by half an inch, then I'll connect the curve to that half an inch, then to the bust line. That's my front armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to mark the same measurement, the bust measurement, the same thing I marked on the bust, I'll mark it on the desired length. So I'm going to connect a straight line. If you're drafting this type of jacket, you are going to be using the highest measurement. So on this part of the bodice, the highest measurement here is my bust measurement. So I'm marking exactly that bust measurement on the desired length. Remember, we added extra 3 inches for ease, then half an inch sewing allowance. So I connected straight there. And we're practically done with the pattern drafting. So next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out the pattern. So before that, I forgot to add my back armhole curve. So I'm just going to pause there and then connect back armhole curve right from that midpoint of the armhole line to the bust measurement. You can see. So I'll now cut out. I'm going to be cutting out this back pattern first before we cut out our front pattern. Remember, we are drafting both of them in one single piece. So I'm going to cut out the back. As you can see, I cut out the back neckline too, and then the back armhole. Then I'm going to be folding in the zipper allowance to place the pattern on my fabric to cut out the back first. So before we do that, we're going to also draft the sleeve pattern as well. So I'm going to be measuring the armhole. You can see me, I'm measuring the armhole curve right there, the length of the armhole curve, and then I'm going to mark exactly that measurement on the sleeve. This is assumed to be our shoulder point, shoulder line on the sleeve. So I measured 12 inches on that armhole there. So I marked exactly 12 inches. Then I'm going to be marking my cap's height. Please, if you don't know how to draft a basic sleeve pattern, check my description box. I'm going to be adding the link there. I have a video on that on my channel. So I'm marking exactly that 12 inches armhole measurement on the cap's height too. Then I'll connect a perpendicular line straight to the crown of the sleeve or the shoulder point. So I'll get the midpoint of that perpendicular line now. As you can see, I folded the tape into two. I got the midpoint. Then I'll mark the midpoint. Then on that midpoint, I'll go up by half an inch. Like I said, if you don't know how to draft the basic sleeve, please go back and watch it on my channel. I'll add the link right here in the description box. So I'm connecting the front armhole and the back armhole of the sleeve. Then I'll come down on my desired length. I'll mark 9 inches because this sleeve is going to be gathered. I'm going to have a band as well. So I'm going to just make it 9 inches there. And then the sleeve is ready. I'll just cut it out. So I'm cutting out the back armhole first, and then I'll open up the sleeve. Please, this sleeve is drafted on fold. Then I'll open it up now and cut out the back armhole there on one side. So we have both our back and our front armhole for our sleeves. So the sleeve is ready now. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my pattern on the fabric and cut it out. So I'm going to be using two different fabrics like I showed you earlier. And then for the first one, I'll cut out the back first. So I'll place the fabric on fold. I folded the fabric into two, and then this is the back pattern now I'm cutting out. So I placed it on fold, and then I pinned the pattern on the fabric. So I'm going to be adding half an inch on the shoulder for joining allowance. I'll just go up by half an inch on the shoulder line. Just go up by half an inch. So I'll connect the points together. I went up by half an inch on the neckline and then on the shoulder point where the shoulder ended, and then I connected it. So I'm going to be joining that to the back shoulder. So after doing that, I'll cut out the back of this jacket. Okay, so I'll set that aside, and then I'm going to now cut off the armhole, the back armhole, and the back neckline. So I'll be left with the front neckline, with the front pattern. So I've removed the back neckline and the back armhole. I'm left with the front pattern, and then I'm adding the same thing I did for the back pattern, half an inch on the shoulder for sewing allowance, and then I'm going to cut out the front. I'm going to cut two pieces. Remember the back, we cut it on fold, but this front, cut two pieces. Remember this front has a zipper, so I opened up that zipper allowance. I folded this when I was cutting the back. I folded it in, so I'll open it up and cut it for the front. So I'm going to be using this fabric now to cut out the second fabric we're using for this jacket. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to be cutting pockets. Okay, so I'm going to be using a kangaroo pocket for this particular fabric. Remember I said we have two different pockets. If you look at the thumbnail, you see my caption there. So this jacket, each of the sides has its own pocket. So this is a bomber jacket. I just measured 18.5 inches long. I folded into two. Then this upside is 9 inches, as you can see me marking there. And then I'll go in by 4.5 inches. On that 9-inch mark, I'll go in by 4.5 inches. And then I'll also connect. I went up by 4 inches too from the damper. Then I'll connect them together to form my pocket opening. I'm sorry if this video is a little bit fast. I don't want it to be so long, so I'm trying to fast forward some of it. So this is the pocket opening. There's about 7 inches. By the time I finish hemming with half an inch on both sides, on each side, to now be left with 6 inches as a pocket opening. So I'm going to slit this into two now for each side of the jacket. It's going to be at the front. I'm going to place this on each side of the jacket at the front to form our kangaroo pockets. I'm sorry if you don't really understand how I cut this pocket. Watch the video very well. The illustration is very clear. And then after cutting out the pocket, I'm going to be joining our fabrics together, front and back, for each jacket. It's a 2-in-1, like I said earlier. So for each one, I used the half an inch seam allowance that I added in the pattern to join them together. You can see I've sewn the front and the back together for each of the jackets. So now I've also cut out lining for the pocket. I am using the same fabric as lining. I cut out lining for the pocket. So I have 4 pieces of this fabric now as pockets. I'll be using one to be turning each other. Then I have a band that I'm going to be putting at the pocket opening. So I already ironed the interfacing on the band. I cut like 1.5 inches band. So I folded it into two. I cut 3, I folded into 2. So I'm going to be placing the band in between the pocket and the lining, and then I'll sew and turn it like I just showed you. I'm going to be sewing it now, and then I've sewn it for each side of the pocket. You can see how beautiful it looks already. So now we are done sewing the pocket for this jacket. Then the next one, I'm going to be sewing the pocket as well for this other jacket. So this is a different pocket altogether. It's not the same kangaroo pocket like we did in the other one. So this is called welt pocket. It's an advanced pocket. I'm going to also be adding a description on a detailed tutorial how to make this pocket. So I'm going to be fast forwarding it a little bit in this video to avoid wasting of time. Okay, so this particular pocket is sewn together it's sewn on the fabric here. So I'm going to be marking out our zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inches. As you can see me there, I'll mark it out, and then I'll mark out my bust palm measurement. That's my dart measurement is 3.5 inches after the zipper allowance. Then I'll go in again by 3 inches, so making it a total of 8 inches from the zipper, from the center front, 8 inches. And then I'll go up there on that 8-inch mark by 2 inches. I'm making sure it's still 2 inches on the 2-inch mark, 8 inches, sorry, on that 2-inch mark. Then I'll mark out my pocket opening, 6 inches. You can use 5 inches, it's your preference. So I'm making sure it's still 8 inches from that pocket opening. I know it's a bit confusing. Let's go and watch a detailed video on how to make this pocket. I'm going to be adding the link as well. So I'm going to draw the pocket opening right there, the 6 inches pocket opening, and then I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to use my chalk to draw a rectangular line of 1 inch. So 1/2 inch on both sides of this pocket opening now, making it 1 inch. half inch on each side of the pocket opening. I'm going to connect them together to give us a rectangle. And then on this line, for easier understanding, I'm using this black fabric to explain it well. Like, I'm going to, because my chalk light is not showing well on the fabric, so I'm going to just draw out a 1 inch rectangular line for my pocket opening, and then I'll divide the line into two to get the midpoint. Connect the straight line for the midpoint, and then on this line, at each end of the line, I'll go in by half an inch and draw a diagonal line to meet these 1 inch lines at this end, half an inch from the midpoint. I'll now draw a diagonal line connecting them back to the 6 inches mark. Sorry. I hope you understand this. And so that's exactly what I'm doing on the fabric right now. I'm going in now by half an inch from that midpoint. I'm marking two diagonal lines to meet the 6 inches mark. I'm doing the same thing on the other side, so I'm doing it on both ends of the rectangle. Half an inch from the midpoint, and then draw two diagonal lines to meet the 6 inches mark on both ends. So after doing that, I'm going to be placing the pocket bag and the pocket lining on each side of this rectangle. So this is my pocket lining, and this is the welt. This is called the welt. I cut 7 inches width for this. Remember, the pocket opening is 6 inches and this welt is 7 inches, so it's 1 inch longer than the pocket opening. So this is the pocket bag itself. It's going to be on the upper side. If you're sewing it for a jacket like this, it's going to be towards the side seam, and then this is the welt will be under, then the pocket lining will be on top of the welt on one side of the rectangle, while the pocket bag will be on the other side of the rectangle. I'm going to now stitch on that on half an inch with half an inch sewing allowance, and make sure that my stitches stops at that 6 inches mark, leaving an extra half an inch on each side of the pocket opening. You know, these pocket bags are 7 inches long. So after sewing them together, I'm going to slash open that midline. Remember that midline of that rectangle? I'm going to slash it open until I get to that half an inch where I drew two diagonal lines. Then I'm going to be cutting towards the diagonal line on each side of the pocket opening right now. Make sure that you don't cut open your seam that you just stitched. So I'm cutting open that midpoint, the midline. When I get to the half an inch mark, I'll cut towards the diagonal lines that I drew earlier on both sides of the rectangle, making sure that it's close to the seam line, but be careful not to cut open your seam. So after doing that, I will turn it over to the wrong side of the fabric. Remember, all these sewings we did them on the right side of the fabric. So you turn it over. Remember, your pocket bag and pocket lining, they're also facing right side to each other on the right side of the fabric. By the time you now turn it over to the wrong side, you are going to now pick the pocket bag and the lining, and that diagonal line you cut there is going to form something like a dot tip. You pick the three of them, pin it together, and stitch to close the pocket bag, making sure you don't stitch on your main fabric this time around. Just stitch on that diagonal dovetail that is you cut open, and then you stitch the pocket bag together. You see that place. So this is just to stitch close the pocket. So now the right side, look at how the right side is looking now. So beautiful. And then the wrong side as well. So I've sewn the two pockets now. I've sewn the two pockets. So the next thing we're going to do, see how neat the pocket looks. So the next thing we're going to do now is to bring our elastic band. We're going to bring our the elastic band, the ribbon fabric that we're going to be using as elastic band. So this is the ribbon fabric. So this is the 5 inches width, and then the length, I'm going to be using my hip measurement to cut the length of this elastic band. So I measured this fabric round, and then my hip measurement is about 42 inches. I minus 10 inches from my hip measurement, and I'm left with 32 inches. So the total length of this band now is 32 inches, including the Ankara fabric I added at each end. So if you look at the band very well, you see that I added Ankara fabric at each end, where I'm going to be fixing my zipper on the Ankara fabric. I don't want to fix the zipper on the band, the elastic band. So I added 3 inches on each side of the band, 3 inches with Ankara fabric. With the two different fabrics that we are going to look at it, I joined the two fabrics together to form my 3 inches width on each side of the band. Then I folded the band into two and notched the midpoint at both ends, both up and down. So I'm going to also fold the fabric into two and notch the midpoint as well. So once you do that, the next thing is to sew. As you can see, you know this elastic band is shorter in length. So as you're sewing, you'll be dragging the elastic. Just sewing with half an inch. You'll be dragging the elastic, and this is the result at the end of the day. So after sewing it, you're not going to bring the second fabric. You fold it into two and notch the midpoint as well. Then you place the midpoint front to front, the right side facing each other on the band, that midpoint on the band that you notched earlier too. So you place them right side facing each other, and then you're going to now drag the elastic towards the end, each end, and then you sew. Or you can as well just be sewing and be dragging the elastic and make sure that the midpoints are aligning. So after sewing, this is what it looks like. You can see how neat and beautiful it looks already. It's already taking shape. So you see the front and the back now, they look very neat. You cannot see any seam, any rough seam there. So the next thing is to install zipper. I'm using a metal zip, 24 inches length here. And so it's always advisable to use a long zip. You can cut off the excess. It's better, it's safer than using a short zip that will not get to the end of your jacket. So now I'm going to start. You see that point where the Ankara stops? Now I join the two fabrics together. So that midpoint there, I'm going to place my zip there to be sewing it. I'm going to be pinning it on that 1.5 inches zipper allowance that I left. So I'm going to be pinning it towards the neckline, up to the neckline, and then I'll sew one part. So I'm going to, before I sew, I will make sure that I pin the second part of the jacket too, to be sure that my zip is aligning before I'll now sew the zip. So I've sewn the zip on one side of the jacket. You see how it looks? So I'm now going to be using the other jacket to turn this like a lining. You know how you turn with a lining? So this is how to fix an inseam zip that you will not see any rough stitching outside. So now on that other midpoint where I joined the second Ankara, I'm going to now turn it up to close up the zip with three sides facing each other, and then I'll stitch very close to the first stitch I made on the zip. So if you cannot see the stitch line, after pinning it, you turn it over to the other side where your stitch line is showing, so you can stitch very close to the stitch line. And then I'm done stitching that. You can see how neat both inside and outside looks right now. I'm really loving this jacket. You can see how neat it looks. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to sew the neck band. We're also going to be using this ribbon fabric to sew the neck band. So the next thing I'm going to do is to fold the neck into two equal parts, making sure the shoulders are aligning, and then I will measure it. I have 10 inches there. So I'm going to get this ribbon fabric. I'm going to be minusing some inches from it. You know the fabric is very stretchy, so you need to be minusing some inches from it. So I'm going to be using a length of I'm going to be using a length of I'm going to be minusing about 4 inches. I'm going to be using a length of 6 inches or thereabout, and then I'll fold it into two. Sorry, the camera didn't capture that part. I folded that length into two, and then I'm marking out 1.5 inches width. I don't want it to be too wide, so I'm marking 1.5 inches width. Then towards the end of the neckband, I reduced the length from 1.5 inch to almost half an inch because I want it tapered towards the center front. As you can see, sorry the camera didn't capture that, but I hope you understand what I mean. Like the neck band, I measured and folded into two. Then I marked out the width of my band. Then the upper part where I'll be joining to the neck, I tapered it towards the end while on foot. So by the time I open it, the neckband, or it will be tapered on both ends. So I'm notching the midpoint of the neckband now. I'm also notching the midpoint of the jacket too, or the neckline of the jacket. So I'll also fold into two again, and then I'll notch the midpoint. Please note that I'm sewing this neckband on one part of this jacket, not on the two of them. So I'm sewing on one first, and then I'll be turning with the second one. So the midpoint now, I'll now match the neckband to the midpoint of the jacket, and then I'll sew. I will bring it out, and once I'm done sewing, I will bring it out from the armhole before I will now turn it with the second jacket to turn the neckline. I'll bring it out from one side of the armhole, and then I will now pin this other jacket with right sides facing each other, making sure the midpoint also match and the shoulders match as well. You need to be very careful to make sure that everything is aligning. So I'm cutting off the excess zip there. I'll cut it off, and then the neckband, I'll pin it carefully and sew. Sorry about my dog there. So now once I'm done sewing, I'll bring it out back from the armhole. So I'm done sewing it right now, and I'm trying to zip it up so you can see how beautiful it looks. So you see how the neckband, see how it's tapered towards that zipper. Please make sure you don't sew into your zip. So you have to come out by at least half an inch from the zipper to sew your neck band. So it looks beautiful. See the inside as well. It looks very neat. Both the outside and the inside look very neat. You will not see any rough edges. So we are almost done with this jacket. The last thing we're going to be doing is to sew our sleeves and attach them to the jacket. So we're going to also be sewing a band to the sleeves as well, the same way we sewed on the jacket. So I'm measuring the round sleeve there is about 18 inches. Then I'm going to be cutting a band of about 9 inches because this is really stretchy, and then my round sleeve there should be about 7 inches or thereabouts. So I'm cutting a band about 9 inches. I'm also going to fold it into two as well to notch the midpoint on both sides of the band, the same way we did for the jacket. So I'm going to be, after notching, I also fold the sleeve into two and notch the midpoint as well. Then I'll match the midpoints together and pin it at the midpoint. Then I'll sew towards each side of the sleeve while dragging the band to fit in. So I'm done sewing one side now. Then I'll pick the second fabric, do the same, repeat the same process, matching the midpoints together and sew. So I'm done sewing the other fabric. So I'll just turn it over with right sides facing each other, and then I'm going to join with 1 inch sewing allowance to close up the sides. So I'm done closing up the sides now. So I'm now going to turn it over to the right side. So this is how it looks on the right side. So I'll now put in my hand and drag one of the sleeves inside to form one sleeve, to form one single sleeve. So the other one will be forming acting like a lining to it. So this is how the sleeves looks. So I'm going to open up the sleeves so I can secure the band area. This is how the inside of the sleeve also looks. So you can wear each side of the sleeve, any side you choose to wear, you can wear it. So I'm opening up the band, that seam allowance on that band. I'm going to be joining them together, stitching them together so that the band can be firm. So I'm done sewing these two sleeves now. So the last thing we're going to be doing is to be attaching the sleeves to the jacket, and then we are done. So first of all, we're going to be picking the first fabric sleeve on top, and we're just going to match the armholes together. Remember, we closed up the armhole already. So we're going to be matching them together, making sure the armholes match. You just put it inside, from the inside of the armhole, bring it out. Remember, this is the right side now. So it's going to be facing the right side of the armhole once you put it from the inside of the armhole. So I'm just notching the crown of the sleeve. I'm going to match it to the shoulder point as well, and then match the armhole to the armhole of the jacket as well. I'll just pin it together and then sew. Sorry, my light went off. It took my light in the course of this video, so it's a bit darker at this point. My apologies. But I hope you can see what I'm doing. So I'm done sewing one part of the sleeve, so it's remaining the inside, the inner part, the one with the other fabric. So I'll just go and bring it out from the side seam. I left about 4 inches open on the side seam of this other jacket inside, the inner one. So I left about 4 inches open where I'm going to be turning out everything. So I'm going to be putting hand inside that 4 inches that I left on the side seam open to drag out the second sleeve out. I'll drag out the sleeve as well as the armhole for the jacket, for the art jacket. You can see that 4-inch mark there. So I'll just put in my hand from inside and drag out, put the sleeves and the armhole of this jacket. So I'm going to be matching them the same way I matched the outer sleeve to the armhole. I'm going to be doing the same thing here, matching the sleeve, the armhole of the sleeve to the armhole of the jacket, and then the crown of the sleeve to the shoulder point of the jacket for this second fabric as well. and then I'll sew. Make sure that the right sides are facing each other. Even if it lose squeeze, don't worry, by the time you're done sewing and drag it out, everything will align. So I'll just sew it round and drag it out from the outside. I'm done sewing it, I'm dragging it out right now. And then we're done with one part of this sleeve. As you can see, the inside is neat as well as the outside. So we're going to repeat this same process, exactly this same process on the other side of the sleeve, just that this other side now we're going to be dragging everything out from that 4 inches opening we left on the side seam. We're going to be dragging both sleeves, unlike the first one that we started with the armhole. We're going to be dragging both sleeves out from there and then sew. So we're done sewing now, and this is the final look of the sleeve. See how the inside is looking very neat. Both the inside and the outside, you're not going to be seeing any rough edges. The 4 inches opening we left on the side seam, where we turned everything out, you can cover it up with your hemming gum. Just put your hemming gum and iron it and cover it, and there will be you will not see any rough edges. And this is the final look. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. See you in my next class. Bye.